My Little Pony Fanfic. My Beloved Son. Story by Lawiet Oz. Chapter 2, Starting to Live Together. Embarrassed. That was the exact word to describe my feelings at that moment. For starters, I was breaking several family rules. Second, well, I don't know much about horses, but judging by the size of the creature in my living room, she was a fully grown mare. It was awkward, and my gentleman's pride was completely shattered. Bringing her to my parents' house felt like when some local deadbeat gets a girl pregnant and moves her into his parents' place so they can support her. Except in my case, I wasn't that deadbeat, she wasn't that girl, and there was definitely no pregnancy involved. I quickly took her up to my room, briefly explaining a few things along the way, like what a microwave is for, or how a device so small could be used to make phone calls, and other basic concepts. "This is the last one, I promise," she said before asking yet another question. "What is that used for?" She was pointing at the television. "For entertainment. And in some cases, to keep people ignorant and manipulate them for political gain," I replied. She stared at the TV with a look that clearly said, "Then why do people even buy it?" Noticing her expression, I added, "You see, in my world, there are many contradictions and a lot of double standards. Cheaters who complain about alcoholics, alcoholics who complain about cheaters, cheating teachers who complain about corrupt leaders, and religious people who complain about atheists. The list goes on and on. So, everything in this place is a double standard?" she asked, walking beside me. "It's impossible not to fall into double standards. We all make mistakes, because we are all." I was about to say human, but since she wasn't, I corrected myself. "It's impossible because we are all imperfect beings. And even though we learn from our mistakes, we always highlight our best traits instead of our flaws." "Highlighting our flaws would be strange," she noted. "Yeah, I know," I said, opening the door to my room and letting her in. "Hold on here." I went downstairs for a few minutes to grab some bandages to dress her wing and leg, along with some water for both of us, and then headed back up. When I stepped inside, the first thing I saw was her picking up a plushie from among my things. Without thinking, I looked at her with a glare and snapped, "Put that down." As soon as the words left my mouth, I realized how I must have looked to her. I'm a young guy, I'd like to say a mature one, but let's be honest, I'm not. Caught off guard, I quickly tried to excuse myself. "Look, it's a very precious memory from a special person." "I see," she replied, looking around the rest of my room. Perspective change. After the human apologized for his rather childish reaction, I took a closer look at the room. It wasn't very big. My own bedroom back home could easily fit inside it about 4 times. But then again, being here was the direct result of one of my escapes. Still, I was stuck here now, so I had no choice but to wait until someone found me or figure out a way to get back on my own. "Give me your paw," the boy asked after straightening out his bed. I extended it toward him with a bit of hesitation. But the moment his hands touched it, I pulled it back instinctively. I suppose my reaction was a bit childish too, but it was the first time a creature of his species had ever touched me, and I was scared. Seeing the boy's expectant look, I extended it again. He let out a heavy sigh and said, "No, the other one." The other leg was completely unharmed, so I had no idea what he wanted it for. But before I could ask, he took hold of it quite gently, almost as if he was nervous too, and wiped it clean before slipping on the missing shoe. "Thank you," I said quietly. He then moved on to treat my injured leg. He washed it first with some water and then applied a bit of alcohol. I didn't remember Equestria's alcohol burning quite this badly. After a few suppressed groans of pain on my part, he placed a piece of gauze over it and wrapped it in a bandage. Next came my wing. Pegasi are extremely sensitive about their wings, so I was terrified. "Is this going to hurt?" I asked hesitantly, watching his expression. "No," he said, examining the wing. Though judging by his face, saying I caught a hint of mischief in his eyes was an understatement. Even from a mile away, you could tell he either had a massive streak of cynicism or a very, very dark sense of humor. "Are you lying to me?" I asked again. "Yes," he said plainly, just before stretching my wing out and pouring the alcohol directly onto it. It burned hotter than Tartarus itself. Well, maybe not that hot, but it was pretty close. Perspective change. "Don't be dramatic," I told the mare, who was wincing and making faces from the pain. I couldn't help but chuckle a little at the expressions she pulled every time I made a mistake which, to be fair, weren't intentional. Mostly. I'm no bird vet, after all. "All done," I announced triumphantly. She immediately pulled her wing back and began rubbing it with one of her front hooves. Ignoring that, I looked at her and asked, "Why do you speak German?" "What?" she blinked. "German. The language you said I was terrible at speaking. In my world, it's called German. But you have a strange accent." "Yours is the strange one," she countered. "And it's not German, it's the native language of the horses in my country. We learn both back home, it's almost a requirement for many jobs. We take our traditions very seriously." "Is it the same here?" "Depends on the tradition, and on what people like. Most of them just change and evolve over time," I answered. I walked over to the wardrobe and opened it to reach for a book on the highest shelf. The shelf was packed. It's not that I'm an avid reader or someone who follows modern bestsellers, but I do manage to read about 50 books a year. I found the one I was looking for titled Gulliver's Travels and pulled it down to show her. "Why are you showing me this book?" she asked, lifting it with her magic. "It tells the story of a traveler's adventures throughout his life. In his final journey, he ends up on an island inhabited by talking horses. He mentions in his journal that their language sounds like German mixed with the rushing sound of a river, exact same description Celestia gave." I pointed to the final chapter. Her face lit up instantly. It was clearly the first piece of good news she had heard in a long time. "That means they can reach this place," she gasped happily, hopping up and down. I chuckled at her childish, almost endearing reaction. The island in the book was never actually found, despite many people searching for it. But setting that aside, yes. If they are looking for you, and they have the power to come here, they might find a way. Her smile widened. "By the way," I said, drawing her attention back to me. "What's this?" I pointed at the sun-shaped mark on her flank. "That is my cutie mark," she replied naturally, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "And what is that supposed to be?" "It tells you a lot about who you are. Where I come from, it's how we discover a pony's special talent." "A pony? But you're a horse," I said, caught off guard by the word. "There are very few actual horses where I'm from. The correct term is pony." I took that to mean that in her world, full-sized horses like her were rare, and most equines were smaller. "And it tells you your skills?" I asked, laying out a few blankets on the floor while she sat on the bed. "Yes, that's what it's used for." She paused, watching what I was doing. "Where are you going to sleep?" "Right there," I pointed to the bed she was sitting on. "But, are you sleeping on the floor, then?" "Brilliant deduction, Sherlock," I replied sarcastically, settling down onto my improvised bed. "At least until you recover. How long do you think it'll take for your wing to heal, anyway?" "Are you kicking me out?" she asked, a note of worry in her voice. "No, I just want to see you fly. In another life, I wanted to be a pilot," I said, half poetically, giving her a small smile. "You remember your past lives?" she asked, looking more shocked than at any other point during the night. I let out a soft laugh at her reaction and wished her good night. I turned off the light, locked the door, and jammed a chair under the handle just in case one of my parents decided they needed something from my room. "I need something from your room" was their favorite excuse to drop in late at night to check if I was asleep or if I had even come home. The next morning, I woke up around 7:30. It was unusually late for me, since my alarm is strictly set for 5 a.m., even on Saturdays. In my ideal daily routine, I actually enjoy waking up early to go for a walk. Looking over at the bed, I saw Celestia wide awake, staring blankly at the ceiling. She didn't seem to notice that I had gotten up or that I was watching her. I stayed quiet, letting her body language and expressive face tell me how her night had been without needing words. Then I noticed something that caught me off guard, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't know what to do or how to react. I've made girls cry before, putting my female classmates and Celestia in the same category here, but in those cases, I always knew why. Flashback. "Shut up already. I can't stand you. All you do is criticize my work all day," a female classmate shouted at me. "The teacher specifically asked me to critique your work so you wouldn't fail the exam, idiot," I defended myself. "Yeah, but there are better ways to say things," she snapped. Sure, there were. But she wasn't exactly being polite with me either, so why should I be with her? "Don't be such a baby. Just get to work, please," I said, thoroughly exhausted by her attitude, and I did say please. "Oh, I'm sorry for having breasts," she spat back, thoroughly offended. "Don't worry about it," I replied in a soothing, comforting tone. "You don't." The entire classroom burst into laughter because, frankly, she was as flat as a board and she ran off in tears. A couple of my classmates even gave me a pair of Thug Life sunglasses the next day, which I still keep to this day. End of flashback. "Is something wrong?" I asked after a moment. She turned to look at me, then pointed toward the window as if something was terribly wrong with it. I walked over and looked out. It was just the sun, rising like it normally does every morning, at least in early December. "It's sad," she whimpered between sobs. Sunday. What about the sun?" I asked, getting a little concerned by her strange behavior. "It's rising on its own," she finally managed to say, leaving me with a total WTF look on my face. I sat down on the edge of the bed and spent a few minutes thinking about what to ask or say. In the end, I decided not to overthink it. After all, there was a winged, horned mare with a sun tattoo sitting on my bed. Deciding to give her some space with her thoughts, I headed into my bedroom's bathroom to wash up, then went downstairs to make us some breakfast. Perspective change. To be completely honest, I, Princess Celestia, had never felt so utterly useless as I did today. Leaving aside the fact that I was stranded in an unfamiliar world, nothing had ever squeezed my heart as tightly as watching the sun rise all by itself. I had woken up startled by a little red box playing a song. When it wouldn't stop, I threw it into the bathroom. But then, reality hit me. Who raises the sun here? Why had I never asked myself that question before? Now, I regretted it deeply. Once, I asked a tourist what he missed most about his home country, and he told me it was his native language. He said he had never realized how much it meant to him until he lost it. Standing here, watching the sun rise entirely on its own, I finally understood what he meant. I had taken raising the sun for granted. Thousands of years ago, when I first started doing it, I had even resented the duty. But now I would give anything to hear a single round of applause after completing my daily task. It didn't matter that I was no longer a princess in this world. Something that was so deeply mine had been taken away. Who gave them the right? Who gave this world the power to strip away something that belonged to me? And what about my little ponies? I knew that, together, they had the power to raise the sun on their own, but it wasn't the same. What if they realize I'm not irreplaceable? What if they realize they don't need me? What if Luna can't do it alone? It was heartbreaking to lose something that had always been part of who I was, something I was born to do. I knew I had made a mistake by running away from home to escape my life as a princess, but I never wanted to lose the sun. Perspective change. I came back upstairs carrying a tray with bowls of mixed fruit, topped with yogurt and granola, for the mare currently occupying my bed, which sounds wrong on so many levels. When I entered, she was still staring directly out the window at the sun. "Is something wrong?" I asked. "I used to raise the Sunday, or at least, I did where I come from," she answered, sounding calmer than before. "Well, you can't do that here." "That's a real shame," I said, stepping closer. I handed her a fork and knife I had tucked into my pocket. As she began to eat, I couldn't help but notice how refined and elegant her table manners were. "It really is a shame you can't keep doing it," I spoke up after she finished her generous portion. "I feel so sad, it feels like my heart is being crushed, like a part of me was ripped away," she murmured, wiping a tear with her wing. I gently moved her wing aside, removed the bandage to clean the wound, and started applying a fresh one. "Must be nice." "I actually envy you," I admitted honestly. Because I really did. She had the chance to start fresh in a completely new place. Nobody here knew who she was, what mistakes she had made, or her failed relationships. All she had to do was begin again, something I could never do. "Envy," she suddenly yelled, her voice booming with a power that wasn't normal. "What are you talking about, you insensitive, ignorant fool?" The sheer volume nearly shattered my windows and would have definitely alerted my family if they had been home. "I'm saying you have a whole new life ahead of you," I said, trying to defend my point. "Yes, you lost your home, your family, and your job. So how can you? But you just gained a blank slate," I interrupted. "A fresh start. A chance to do all the crazy things you never got to do, to make your dreams come true. You get to leave all your past mistakes behind, never to see them again. Because the people you love, you carry them with you in every gesture, every habit, every part of who you are. We keep the ones we love in our hearts, no matter how far away they are. And if you ever look back, it should only be to gather the strength to keep moving forward." She stared at me, completely speechless, her eyes wide with shock. "Stupid, loudmouth mare," I muttered under my breath, rubbing my ringing ears. I picked up the empty plate and headed out of the room to wash it, leaving her alone with her thoughts.